YouTube, what is going on? How y'all doing out there? Hopefully everybody's safe and doing okay. I'm starting my second big block engine build, keeping myself busy. I'm not sure if y'all knew, probably not. I bought two of those Predator 420s, and my last videos you saw me got the first one all put together and running and everything. This is my second one. Obviously, I already have it disassembled and cleaned up. So I'm just gonna kind of walk you through how I like to do it. I didn't show you the assembly of the last one, so I'll try my best. All I have is my camera, my phone for a camera. So I'm in here in my engine build room. I got a little bit of company over there. She ain't paying attention. Say hey, babe. Hey. But yeah, I'll walk y'all through how I like to do it, and I'll warn you now, I like to use a lot of assembly lube, oil, Loctite, all that stuff. So I'm ready for the comments. I know a lot of people are gonna say I'm using too much, but that's how I like to do it, and it works for me. All right, I'll get right into it. All right, so I got my head here, and as you can see, that little small hole right there, it's not opened all the way up. So I like to go in and be very, very careful and clean that up just a little bit. Open it up, get a little airflow for my crankcase vent. I also go through on the block. I don't really open it up on the block. I just clean up the casting. It's kind of dark in there, you can't really see, but let me see if I can get some light in there. That's a little bit more. I like to come in here with this this long drill bit. It's just a little small, what is this, 3/16 drill bit. It could be a little bigger, but I like to come in there and kind of clean up the rough casting. This one actually isn't as bad as the other one. It has some pretty rough casting in there, but I like to clean that up a little bit. I've already done the tissue paper method again and got my bearings out and the governor gear off. So just got to plug up these two holes and like I said, clean out this breather port right here, lap the valves, and put it back together. All right, so I am finished with cleaning up the block and the head. As you can see, let me turn this around so you can see. These already got my valve springs in there, but you can see clean through that hole now. As before, you can tell that hole was not fully bored through, but now I went in there, I cleaned that up. Basically what I do, I start out with the 1/4" drill bit, and then I move up slowly to a 5/16 and then a 3/8. I can fit a 3/8 drill bit all the way through this hole now. Be careful if you choose to do this. This is just something that I like to do. If you mess around and drill through your intake port or bust out the drill bit through right here, that's on you. Don't blame me. But that's just something that I like to do. I clean that up so it goes straight through. And like I said, I can drop a 3/8 drill bit straight through there, just to kind of open that up where it breathes a little bit more. These holes up here for the oil to go into the pins for your rocker arms, I also open those up just a little bit. I don't go all the way through. That way it doesn't create a burr inside of there. I just use a small step bit and I work my way into the oil holes right here. Open those up a little bit. Also, these drain back holes right here, at least that's what I'm assuming they are, is drain back holes, for that way oil doesn't puddle up on these little trays right here. I'm gonna open those up a little bit. That's about I don't know, maybe 3/16, but I open that up and I also transfer it, that way the oil can settle down and fall right through and it's not sitting there. As for the head, that's pretty much it. I took a little wire brush and cleaned it up a little bit. cleaned up the surface. I've already lapped my valves and got the valve springs put back in. These are the factory valve springs right now. I have the dual ones over there, but you can't break in that cam with dual springs. It specifically says on the box, do not break in with dual springs. So I'll run it for a little while until it breaks in, and then I'll swap these valve springs back out with the dual ones. Let me show you this. I completely forgot about this tool. I was going to show it to you on my first engine build, and I completely forgot about it. So I made this little guy out of PVC, obviously. Cut a little slot in it. And this is my homemade valve spring compressor. All I do is, let me grab this real quick. All I do is wad up this rag on the floor like this. Set my head right on there so that way the valves don't open. And this piece right here goes up against my chest. If you ain't got no chest meat, it might hurt a little bit, but I got a little bit of chest meat, so it doesn't bother me as much. And I just get on my knees and bend over to put this right here just like that. And I can push down all day long and get these valves off. I'm not going to take it off because I already have them in there, but you get the picture. Goes right on there, just like that. Put your chest there and push down. I installed the dual springs on my other motor just fine. You might struggle a little bit depending on how heavy you are. I'm a pretty light guy, and I did it, so it works. PVC. This is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a 1.5 T, 1.5 pipe on both sides, and then this is a 3/4, I'm pretty sure. So 1.5 to a 3/4 T. Cut out your slot right there. Leave about, I'd say, I don't know, you can probably go a little less than that, 1/4 inch. And it works just fine. I don't need a clamp or all that stuff. Probably can do it with the head still on the motor. So, yep. Okay, now on to my block. Got it all cleaned up. Everything is ready to go. I'm not gonna hone this thing because it's a brand new motor. I literally put oil and gas in it and started it up straight from Harbor Freight and broke it in real good. So there's no scars in the cylinder, anything like that. So I mean, it probably could use a light hone, but I'm not gonna do it because it's fine. This is what I was telling you about with this crankcase vent here. I opened this up a little bit. Not opened it up, sorry, cleaned it up because it has some rough casting around it. So let me see if I can get you some better light. I cleaned that up real good in there. Had a small piece right there where the lifters go. This drain back hole where your push rods go through, not the lifter bores. I didn't touch the lifter bores because that's a no-no. I'm not that retarded. The middle hole where the oil drains back down from the top. Okay, I opened that up quite a bit so that oil can drain back down and get all on the cam and all that stuff. This is not necessary at all, but I do drill out these holes too to I think 5/16 to get those threads out of there. That way, obviously, for one, it's clean in there, and nothing can get trapped in there. And then once, you know, oil and stuff gets up in there, it can just run right back out, and there's no threads to hold it in there. So again, that's not necessary. That's just something that I do. So I opened up those holes. I opened up the drain back hole in the middle of the lifter bores, and cleaned out this whole passageway right here. This is already clearance. I know maybe some of the older big blocks don't come with this little tray right here clearance, but that is 100% stock. I didn't touch it, and it works just fine with the ARC rod. So I'm good on clearance in there, and that's pretty much it. I figured out last time on my build, I put a 5/16 bolt in here, and I put the bolt on the inside and the nut on the top, and that nut will sink down right into this little cavity right there, and you don't even have to put a wrench on it. It holds itself. So once that nut falls down in there, I just put some sealant over top and it holds itself in there. This guy, I just put a 3/8 bolt and a self-locking nut on there and seal it up just like I did on my other motor. I removed the charging coil and all that stuff, took that out, so I'm not going to be using any of that. So it's all ready to go, ready for assembly. I'll see if I can get a pretty good shot of the whole thing and go from there. Okay, I have my piston here with my billet rod already attached with both of the circlips in the piston. I've previously set my ring gaps already, and I have my cylinder and my piston oiled up already. I use gear oil, differential oil, because it's thick and it doesn't run and it stays put wherever I put it at. For my ring gaps, I'm gonna put mine 180 degrees apart. I know some people say 120 or whatever, but I normally run 180, so that way there's a greater distance between the gaps. I'm gonna put the piston in first instead of the crank because I can put it in from the bottom without using my ring compressor. I do have one, but I don't want to use it because I can just put this in as is. Just ruin my rings. Alright, you want to go with the arrow facing down. My top ring is going to be lined up with that arrow. That's it. That normally only takes me about 5 seconds, but because I was trying not to get in the way of the camera, it took a little bit longer. So all I'm gonna do is slide this up without popping it out the other side, and then I'll install my crank. That's it. My crank is ready to go. A little bit of lube on that guy. Always want to make sure that you put a little bit of lube on your seal. That way you don't ruin your seal. Okay. Getting this stuff all over the place. As I stated in the beginning of the video, I do like to use a lot. I feel like you can't have too much. So be very careful when you're putting this. If you do it this way, when you're putting your crank in, don't hit your bearings, don't hit your rod. All right, got my crank in place. I had to give it a little whack. Sometimes you have to give it a little whack to get that bearing in the seat right back into place. Sometimes it can be a little bit stubborn. If you're having to force it too much, you might have issues that you want to get checked out. Make sure that you're not forcing your crank into place. But I gave it a little whack and it went right in place. I got my connecting rod lined up, so now we're ready to get the cap on. when you're torquing this rod, first off, you want to make sure that you have lubrication on your bearings and that the bearings are in place how they're supposed to be. You line up the tabs and make sure they're flush. You don't want them off to one side or cocked or crooked or anything like that. Make sure you got plenty of lube in there. Lube your rod bolts. And you want to start off at 16 foot-pounds and then work your way up in the increments of 4 foot-pounds all the way up to 26. And it's okay to go a little bit tighter. You know, maybe a couple of foot-pounds or whatever. They also recommend rechecking the rod bolts after you get the engine broken in and change the oil a few times. These washers right here, most people don't even take them off, but I want you to pay attention. These washers have a curved side on one side on the interior part, and this bolt also has a curved edge that goes up to the bottom of the head of the bolt. If you flip this over, the washer won't seat the same. So there's one way that this washer goes on that's flat, and there's another way that's rounded on one side. You want to make sure that you have that washer the right way, or that can mess up the way you torque your fasteners down. So make sure the flat side is facing the rod cap and the rounded side is facing the head of the bolt. Alright, I'm going to put some lube on these and get my cap into place first before I do that. Okay. Also, when you put assembly lube on your rod cap, kind of helps it stay in place. I know some people use motor oil. I don't use motor oil because it's a little bit too runny for me and it gets everywhere. Because like I said, I like to use a lot. Gear oil is a lot thicker and it stays in place. I'm just using assembly lube on these. I put assembly lube on the threads itself and in between the washer and the head of the bolt. And all this does is reduce friction when you're torquing. That way all the energy goes into torquing the fastener, not overcoming friction. All right, get this one in there. Told you I use a lot. Okay. Yep. Okay, just gonna rub that off on there. You can always use that excess somewhere else. One piece I didn't mention earlier, when you tighten this rod down, when you torque it, you want to get it all the way up to the recommended torque spec. Back it back down, loosen it back up, and then re-torque it. That way your bearing caps are seated the way they're supposed to be, The cap is seated to the rod. Everything's lined up with the crank. All that stuff. Make sure you're using a good torque wrench. I bought some from Harbor Freight, and they worked for a couple times, and then they crapped out on me. So you don't want to be sitting there trying to wait for the torque wrench to click, and then all of a sudden you realize it ain't going to click and you're way over tight. Which I over tighten everything anyways, but okay. That's snug that a little over finger tight right now. It's in there. Give it a couple of rotations. Make sure it's not caught or twisted or anything. Now we can start torquing. Okay, I got my little 1/4 inch torque wrench here. The most it's gonna go up is 200 inch-pounds. Right now I got it set at about the 16 foot-pound mark. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down. This is a 12-point 5/16 socket. Do not try to use a 6-point 5/16 socket. Okay. All right, so that's 16 foot-pounds. Stepping up to a bigger torque wrench. Like I said earlier, my 3/8 drive is messed up right now, so I'm gonna step up to the 1/2 inch, and I'm using adapters. I got it set at 20 foot-pounds. Okay, here's 20 foot-pounds. Make some space for this big old thing. Okay, that's on there good. 20 foot-pounds. All right, next one. That's on there good. All right, that's 20 foot-pounds for both of these bolts. Yep. I'm gonna go ahead up to 24. All right, I'm gonna go ahead up to 28 and stop there. That's your torquing process. I'm gonna go ahead and break this back down and see if I can use this wrench. It's got enough leverage. By the way, after you torque your rod down, I've never experienced this, but after you torque your rod down, if you feel like the crank is under resistance, it won't rotate as easily, you probably have a problem. you should be able to rotate the crank freely. Here's my 28. Like I said, recommend it's 26. I'm going 28. There you go. Don't break your bolts. Okay guys, got plenty of lube on my cam. I'm gonna go ahead and slap it in there. Make sure I got my gears lined up. My dots lined up on my cam gear and my crank gear. I already have my lifters in, lubed up and everything, so it's just as simple as lining up 2 dots, and that's pretty much it. Got it 1 tooth off. There we go. It's lined up. Take a look at this. It's just how you want it right there. Those 2 dots lined up. Plenty of lube. Make sure you got your lifters in the same board that they came out of with plenty of lube. Cool. Okay, here's that head one more time. Just wanted to show one more time. I cleaned up those holes right there. Those holes right there. And then this hole right here that goes all the way down to your crankcase. I don't know, I just like how that came out. But you can see straight through it. Straight through it. It's clean. And it's a full bore. So she's ready to go on. I got my dowel pins and everything. My gasket already in. Go ahead and put it on. And get ready to torque that down. I really need to get me a camera stand or something. Get me a GoPro. I got chrome moly push rods from NR. They're the factory, 7 inches length. And only reason I got those is because I'm going to be running the dual springs once I break in my cam. So, but I'm going to go ahead and run them initially. I'm not going to run the stock ones and then swap those out. Also, I just wanted to let y'all know all these torque specs as far as my head bolts, my rod bolts, and probably my flywheel bolt, the nut. I'm gonna recheck all of those with the snap-on torque wrench that I know is properly calibrated. The last time my Harbor Freight ones were spot on, but I'm still gonna check them with the snap-on that I know is calibrated, so that way I don't want to take this thing apart again. Basically, that's why I went a little bit over on the torque specs on the rod. It's because I don't plan on opening this thing back up and rechecking it. I'd rather go a little bit over spec and make sure it's not gonna come off, basically, without messing anything up. But yeah, I got my rod bolts torqued to spec already. I'm gonna double check those, and I'll also torque my head bolts and double check those with the snap-on good torque wrench. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and install my head and probably put the spark plug. Oh no, I'm not gonna put the spark plug back in yet. I'll go ahead and set up the valve train and stuff and get this thing assembled, and it'll probably be maybe a day or two before I can get to that snap-on torque wrench. So yeah, I'll be wrapping this build up, and I'll post a run video whenever I get it all done.